Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Brody Carter. Today, the new rule from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel is going to keep up its attacks against Hamas, and new hostage talks will only be held, quote, under fire. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations warning that more strikes against Hamas are coming, unless Hamas releases the hostages. The warning about the growing influence of anti-Semitism. And President Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin discussing possible peace in Ukraine. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also plans to speak with Trump. That's today. And you know him as a Christian recording artist. Now, Chris Tomlin is also in the movie-making business. He's an executive producer on the new movie, The Last Supper. Those stories and more today on NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
Well, we begin in Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared the rules of negotiating with Hamas have changed. Netanyahu now says hostage talks will only be held, quote, under fire. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
Netanyahu announced the new rule is designed to achieve the goals of the war.
The release of all our hostages, the elimination of Hamas, and the promise that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel.
Israel's message to Hamas, unless more hostages are released, the attacks won't stop.
And if it does not immediately release all the kidnapped men and women, the gates of hell will open, and it will find the full might of the IDF in the air, at sea, and on land facing it until it is completely destroyed.
Yet some freed hostages and families of those still held captive are begging Israel to stop the fighting, fearing Hamas's threat to kill the hostages in revenge.
Reality has already proven to us that war will not return hostages. It will kill them.
Netanyahu insists Israel's military action has forced the terror group to release 196 hostages.
A simple thing was proven. Military pressure is a necessary condition for the release of additional hostages. The military attack on Hamas and the release of our hostages are not contradictory goals. They're goals that are intertwined.
While the fighting resumes, Netanyahu is urging Palestinian civilians to flee the fighting.
And I call on the people of Gaza, get out of harm's way, move to safer areas, because every civilian casualty is a tragedy.
To prevent civilian casualties, the IDF provided a map to residents in Gaza to guide them safely from the fighting.
That's something that the Western world hasn't seen, an army giving up the element of surprise just to give an opportunity to the civilians to get out of harm's way. But we're committed to that. That's our principles, our values, is to make sure that we are fighting terrorists and not civilians.
In Yemen on Tuesday night, the Houthis fired a missile at an Israeli military base and promises more are coming. Earlier this week, the White House said any shot fired by the Houthis would be counted as a shot from Iran, the Houthis' main backer. On Tuesday, the Trump administration repeated that warning.
Our message to Iran is you better take this president seriously, and I think the Houthis learned that the hard way this past weekend.
In their Tuesday phone call dealing with peace in Ukraine, President Trump and Russian President Putin also discussed the Middle East. A readout of the call says the two leaders shared the view that Iran should never be in a position to destroy Israel. They agreed Iran should not be allowed to develop nuclear weapons, weapons that could be used to destroy Israel. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Our Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, he joins us live now from Jerusalem. Chris, why is Netanyahu's new rule of negotiating with Hamas so important?
Well, Brody, for a number of reasons. First of all, it puts military pressure on Hamas. And as Prime Minister Netanyahu said in our report, he really feels like those are intertwined to be able to get the hostages out. It also hinders Hamas from rebuilding its military strength. There's a belief, then understanding that Hamas really has been using the ceasefire to rearm and regroup. It also answers an internal political question for Netanyahu. He's getting pressure from the right. One thing that hasn't been widely spread right now, Brody, is Ben-Gvir, who was a right-wing party, had left the government, but now he's back, and I think that's part of the new policy he agrees with. It also aims to expedite the release of the hostages. And one other thing it does, Brody, it really aligns with the ideas and the sense you get coming out of the Trump White House.
Chris, what about the concerns that Hamas could kill the remaining hostages if Israel keeps attacking?
Well, that's exactly what, many people, and as we saw in our report, many of the hostage families are warning and begging the government that they have to do whatever they can to get the hostages out now. That's been the concern. And what other people are saying and what the government may be warning is that any of the hostages are harmed, that they will go ahead and declare sovereignty and literally take over territory inside the Gaza Strip. Now, that's something that would really alarm Hamas. They don't want to give up and cede that territory. On the other hand, Brody, the government is making the case, as Netanyahu said in our report, it's the combination of military action that puts the pressure on the hostages to be released by Hamas. Right now, 196 out of 251 that were kidnapped on October 7th. Right now, there were 59 remaining inside Gaza, and 24 of those still alive. And I'll just say one other story, Brody. It was years ago, but there was one Israeli soldier who was killed and kidnapped by Hamas. But before his kidnapping at a Shabbat dinner, he told his father, if I'm ever kidnapped, don't negotiate with Hamas.
Well, given the intensified military operations there in Gaza, has Israel taken out any top Hamas leaders in these strikes, Chris?
Well, in fact, they have. They took out the acting head of Hamas in Gaza, his name, Asim al-Dalasi, and then he's been in that position since last July. In that attack just the other day, they took out Hamas's justice minister, took out the head of internal security forces. In addition, they also took out Hamas's interior minister. And one of the questions that we asked the IDF chief spokesman for the international press yesterday, Brody, was, will Israel go in on the ground? And he said that all options are on the table. We know that there are other attacks today, but if they do go in the ground, that's going to represent one more option that Israel has, and really would take the battle with Hamas to a new level.
Well, there's a lot to digest here, Chris. How does the Israeli public feel about the renewed attacks on Hamas?
Well, two main views, and you saw one view there in our report. They see the renewed fighting as a threat to the safety of the hostages. Just up the street from where our bureau is, there was a demonstration of several hundred people saying that they want the hostages freed now and to negotiate with Hamas. There's another view, and it's not as widespread, that agrees with the new policy right now. It's called, one of the main groups for that is called the Tikva Hostage Families Forum. Now, they see the hostage situation from an entirely different perspective. They feel like you need to see it from a national perspective and out of a responsibility for all of the citizens of Israel. And what that means is that during these hostage negotiations, literally hundreds and maybe almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners have been released. Now, that puts other citizens of Israel at risk. And so that is one perspective they have. They also say, if we tell our enemies we want to compromise, that makes us weaker, and negotiations will start when they have their backs against the wall, not us. And they feel like the dialogue with Hamas really doesn't go well, and they feel the previous hostage deal has harmed the security of the country.
Of course, some excellent insight there, Chris. I think we have time for one more quick question. How important for Israel is their coordination with President Trump and people here in the U.S.?
It's huge, and they can coordinate on regional strategy. They can combine military coordination and support. Also, the diplomatic backing that Israel's getting from the White House makes a huge difference in international forum. It creates a deterrence. And for example, they consulted with the White House the other night before the strike, really a stark contrast to the Biden White House. And right now, looking forward to Iran's nuclear program. That's really most important as they potentially coordinate a strike against Iran's nuclear program.
Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell, thanks for your insights, and we'll be looking forward to hear more as the days pass by. Well, back here at home, CBN and Regent University welcomed Israel's UN ambassador to our campus on Tuesday to discuss a wide range of issues facing Israel. Also on the agenda, a major announcement about several partnerships and initiatives. Those efforts are designed to help Regent students and other Americans appreciate and support Israel for generations to come. CBN's Gary Lane has this story.
At the Herzliya Conference in 2003, Pat Robertson reiterated God's love and the support of evangelical Christians for the state of Israel. Here 22 years later, that love was demonstrated at Regent University.
A symposium hosted by the Israel Institute at the Robertson School of Government featured Israeli Ambassador to the United Nations Danny Danon with Regent Chancellor Gordon Robertson and School of Government Dean Michelle Bachmann. The discussion began with a question about Israel's recent attacks on Gaza, ending the ceasefire. Danon suggested more attacks are coming unless Hamas releases the remaining hostages.
We still have hostages in Gaza, 59 hostages. We will do whatever is necessary to bring them back home. And I hope that they will get, the message, and we will be able to continue to see hostages coming back.
Another question raised the issue of whether Israel supports a one-state or two-state solution for the Palestinians after the war in Gaza ends. Ambassador Danon said since October 7th, more Israelis oppose a separate Palestinian state.
We have to admit that the region where we live, I don't think it will change. Because I don't think that you will see a major change among our neighbors in the indoctrination of the next generation.
Danon believes the younger generation is influenced by agents of anti-Semitic ideology, not only in Gaza, but also on American college campuses.
So they are not coming with the machine guns and with boats to the shores of the United States, but they have ways to infiltrate.
And I think that's happening now. We're looking at a deportation of a student from Columbia University, and also the funding that's come from Qatar. I think it's over $5 billion has gone to various campuses across the United States.
Robertson also announced several initiatives and partnerships between Regent, CBN, and the Jewish state. Israel's Hebrew University, in partnership with Regent's Israel Institute and CBN Israel, is offering 3 Regent students fully paid scholarships beginning in the fall of 2025. CBN Israel is also opening a resilience center to help Israelis traumatized by war and the October 7th massacre. It's also helping rebuild Kibbutz Narim, one of the communities devastated by the October 7th attack. Adele Raymer is a Narim resident.
Today, I truly, truly know that the Christian community around the world has our backs. And that just gives us so much inspiration and strength.
CBN Israel and Regent University, standing with Israel today and for generations to come. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Coming up, President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin talk for 2 hours on the phone about a possible peace agreement in Ukraine. We'll hear what they said and see what's happening in the war when we come back. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky plans to speak with President Trump today to hear more about his call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. Tensions remain high in Ukraine following that call. While Putin agreed to halt attacks on energy and civilian infrastructure, his rejection of a full ceasefire and continued strikes highlight the ongoing challenges in reaching a peace agreement. CBN's George Thomas has that story.
Air raid sirens blared in Kyiv and other regions of Ukraine just hours after Vladimir Putin refused President Trump's proposal for an immediate ceasefire on land, air, and sea. Residents in the capital taking shelter underground after Russia launched 147 Iranian-made drones and 6 missiles overnight. Targets in other parts of the country included a hospital and an energy grid, contrary to Putin's promises.
I feel that Putin's words have no credibility at all. What he says could change in a week, just like that.
In a nearly 2-hour-long phone call on Tuesday, Putin agreed not to target Ukraine's energy and infrastructure, but stopped short of agreeing to a full 30-day ceasefire. Steve Witkoff, the president's special envoy to the Middle East, was in the Oval Office during the call.
It's energy and infrastructure in general, and this is something, Sean, that they've been in discussions about for probably the better part of 2 years. And so I think there have been some breakthroughs. I would commend President Putin for all he did today on that call.
Kyiv residents say the Russian overnight attacks show Putin's real response to a peace proposal.
The Russian imperialists do not want to let us live peacefully because they do not recognize our right to exist, so we are forced to fight.
After the call, the Kremlin seemed to add to its list of demands, insisting that Ukraine reduce its troop strength and mobilization efforts, and that the West stop sending arms and sharing intelligence support. Trump said those demands weren't part of Tuesday's discussions.
I think the Kremlin media actually stated that he demanded an immediate cessation of aid to Ukraine in order to get to this multi-step deal.
No, he didn't. We didn't talk about aid, actually. We didn't talk about aid at all.
President Trump is expected to speak with Ukraine's President Zelensky today. Negotiations are expected to continue this weekend in Saudi Arabia. George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, still ahead, you know him as a Christian recording artist, but now Chris Tomlin has also gotten into the business of making movies. We'll tell you about his film, The Last Supper. That's right after this. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Christian recording artist Chris Tomlin enters the movie-making business as executive producer for the new film, The Last Supper. Ephraim Graham brings us this look.
Are you the Messiah? I am.
Chris, this is your first time serving as executive producer on a film?
Yes, it is.
So why'd you make The Last Supper your first movie?
These men are friends of Jesus of Nazareth. The time has come for us to prepare the Passover dinner.
They showed me the movie. I was like, this is insane. This thing is so beautiful and powerful. And I was immediately struck by how excellent it was done. And then just how biblically grounded, and I thought how accurate, and how I was like, wow, this is really well made. And I love this. And so we started talking about, is there a greater partnership? Is there a way to like help bring this to people in a greater way? And so here we are. But when we started talking the music, it was really fun because they're like, hey, is there a song maybe that you have that could work with this? And I said, well, I have this song that I just wrote recently. I haven't played for anybody, but I have a demo of it. Let me play it for you. And instantly when I played it, they were like, the whole production team was like, this is the song for the movie.
I know where you can find him.
Tell me about the song and what birthed the song in you before this movie connection.
That's great. So I went to, that's another crazy thing, how songs can. This one, I wrote with some friends. They were doing this writer's retreat, and they're like, we keep thinking about, and one of the guys said, I keep thinking about John 15, no greater love than this, that a man lays his life down for his friends.
Do you love me?
Yes, Lord. You know that I love you.
This idea of him leaving heaven, all of glory, and trading that crown for a crown of thorns, and these images that we wrote around this no greater love. And so it became this beautiful song. And I mean, it wasn't a week later, 2 weeks later, I get approached with this Last Supper. And they're like, do you have a song? And I'm like, well, actually, I think this has just worked so well.
You do not realize now what I'm doing. But later, you will understand.
Tell me the spark that happened as you're sitting watching this movie. What happened to you?
Lots of sparks, man, honestly. And I was moved by the way I've really never seen a movie that takes on characters that we don't really want to talk about. Judas, for one.
You have the chance to be a leader, to change everything. Why not act? My kingdom is not of this world, Judas.
And how does he betray him? And you're like, well, how did I do that in my life? And you see the struggle of Judas, who loves Jesus, but yet is so torn by the world. And I'm like, gosh, isn't that all of us? And then you got Peter, right, who's like Jesus' bodyguard, basically. There's no one going to touch you, Jesus. I'm following you to the death. And yet an hour later, some little girl says, aren't you with him? And he's like, no, not me. I don't know him. It's like, what?
I would never disown you. What are you doing? It appears I'm the only one ready to protect the rabbi.
So you feel that. It takes you there. And you're like, these were friends. These were brothers. These are guys trying to figure out who this Jesus was. And he's telling them, he knows this is the last time I'm going to be with you guys. And he knows what's coming. And he's like, I'm going to be broken. I'm breaking this for you. This is for you.
Take this and eat it. This is my body given for you.
At that table is Judas and Peter and all these other guys. And he knows, one of these guys, I know you're going to betray me. I know you're going to deny me. And yet he's still, this is for you. All are welcome at the table. That's what I hope people get.
Whoever eats my flesh, drinks my blood, remain in me and I in them. Do this in remembrance of me.
I know a lot of Chris Tomlin fans are going to be lining up to see that one. The Last Supper, it's in theaters nationwide right now. And join us tonight for an all-new edition of Studio 5. We sit down with Christian singer Rebecca St. James and her husband discussing their new book. It's Navigating Love, Music, Family, and Faith. And hear how one Pittsburgh Steelers lineman uses his faith to lead his team on the gridiron and in the locker room. You can catch that new episode of Studio 5 on the CBN News channel at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can also watch it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. We'll be right back with an encouraging word for your day ahead. Stick with us. Well, now it's time for a little Wednesday word on this beautiful morning. It comes from Ephesians chapter 5, verse 14, where the Apostle Paul quotes a saying, "Wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." What a powerful call to the transformative awakening that faith promises. Just as dawn disperses the darkness of night, Christ's light brings new life and clarity to those who seek him. Let today be a new day. Enjoy your coffee or your tea. And as you go, let the light of faith illuminate your path. God bless you. Thanks for watching us today. That's going to do it for us on this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Instagram, or X, formerly known as Twitter. And we'll hope you join us next time. Have a great day.
Daily Quick Start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.